Kamen Rider W is a special entry in Toei's mega franchise, where detective noir crime drama overlaps with blood-pumping action and pyrotechnics sequences. Its main hook is the titular Kamen Rider having two people in one body. If you've got the itch to play in that kind of adventure, all while having unique mechanics for both players and monsters, I have a custom homebrew for 5e that guides DMs to run a superhuman monster crime family, a whole bunch of magic items to help you carry the narrative, and of course, a bunch of player options from magic items, races, feats, and even 2 new subclasses to bring Kamen Rider W to your D&D table. Hello and thank you for being here, and welcome to My Wife Is the MC. I'm DMV and you're watching Husbando Homebrew, a show where we take pop culture to pen and paper. This homebrew has a lot of moving parts, and much like how I made the Geats document, it also contains some guidelines on how to create a W-themed setting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's set the stage and discuss my design goals. First, design the mechanics to carry the narrative. This is the main driving force of the homebrew. My design sense is to always try to bake story elements into the mechanical crunch of the features. 2. Keep the mechanics balanced, as long as they fit the narrative element. I always try to keep the story elements top of mind, but as much as I can, I want the features to be balanced enough such that DMs can allow them at their tables with little to no tweaking. Third, design with flexibility in mind. While the mechanics are written to bake in narrative elements, I also make it a point to avoid hard locking the features to a specific setting. I also created a light version of the document in case some tables just want to try it out first, but more on that in a bit. Lastly, and this is pretty big, I created 2 ways for players to be able to roleplay as Kamen Rider W. One using magic items and one using subclasses. Again, more on that later. Speaking of later, MC has a challenge for you fine folks. But put that on my tab of things I'll get to later in the video. So, are you comfy at the table? Make sure you insert that like Gaia memory and henshin!
Before we begin, we'd like to thank these magnificent mallards you see on screen right now. Special thanks to these top 10 most recent supporters: Time Bomb, Echo Echo Echo, Art by Eifer, Robin, Ringmaster, Terra Aegis, N, Zetter Zero, Kayoba, Vow Cat, and the Absolute Mad Lad Cosplay Battle. Thank you all so much for your support.
Part 1. Welcome to Windy City. The story is set in the Windy City of Futo, a modern Japanese hub landmarked by its tall wind turbine. Working in the shadows of this idyllic city is Museum, a criminal syndicate that exploits, develops, and distributes these addicting pieces of power called Gaia memories. There's a lot of moving parts, and stat blocks aside, there's a lot of mechanical items you have to build. But let me help you with the first part. The first chapter of the homebrew is a setting guide. It's no gazetteer by any means, but my intended use for this chapter is to serve as a list and inspiration for the various narrative elements present in Kamen Rider W. Obviously, this part is mostly useful for DMs, but what can players get from this section? Well, a descriptive list of factions and rules can help players find character inspiration. Like, say, a former dealer of Gaia memories who turns to the side of good, for example. On the topic of characters, one key character of this setting is the living conduit of knowledge, Philip. In many ways, he's the main protagonist of the show, while Shotaro is the main perspective the story is told through. Philip has deep connections to Museum, is the driving force behind the true conflict, and is the main beneficiary of the group's benefactor Shroud. He also has the power to literally Google search the planet to find plot points. This could be your next character with a new playable race based on Philip. This race has intelligence-based traits like a modified guidance spell, daily proficiency changes, various divination spells as you gain levels, and a gentle repose after death, which hopefully you don't have to use. Of course, I didn't neglect to give the other heroes of the show some love, but since these guys are more or less human, I instead created character-inspired feats. 2 out of 3 feats are magic item related since W uses a lot of magic items in its narrative. Artifact Resilience gives you a pseudo-legendary resistance against effects caused by magic items. Magically Attuned gives you a buff as long as you're attuned to a magic item like extra force damage or a saving throw bonus. And lastly, Steadfast lets you pull a character arc by giving you additional defenses against becoming frightened or being dead. We've got some of the building blocks of the setting now, but Kamen Rider's main selling point is the transformations, be it from the heroes who turn into Kamen Riders or the villains who turn into dopants. Specifically villains like Sonozaki Psycho, who transforms into the taboo dopant, whose transformation is the only monster that I want to step on me. Part 2. Henshin to Greater Heights. A humongous chunk of the long homebrew is dedicated to the very many magic items found in the series. But they actually have a bit of a trick to them to pull off the Kamen Rider fantasy. Let me explain. See, I built them to work like miniature systems disguised as magic items. I'll get to the DM specific items in a bit, but for players, the main transformation mechanics are outlined under the transformation drivers section. Each transformation driver offers some variety in what they do, but the real purpose is to outline the transformation mechanics. You'll first have to wear the belt on your turn or when you roll initiative, and then slot in a Gaia memory, which you can do in various ways that hopefully mitigates any moment you're caught without your armor. But while the drivers tell you how to transform, it's the Gaia memories that tell you what to transform into. You can find these in the Atlas Mind section of the document. Yeah, side note, I had to change a bunch of names to avoid the names of trademarked items from Toei. You know how it is. So each Gaia memory tells you a little bit about the visual aspect of your transformation, but they also show what kind of buffs and bonuses you get from them. Take the Metal Gaia memory for example, which grants a physical damage reduction and a magic weapon, or the Heat Gaia memory which adds fire damage to your attacks. Also, each one tells you the kind of finisher you can use. Now, I know what you're thinking. DMV, you majestic mallard. Kamen Rider W is two characters sharing the same body. How did you pull it off? With great effort, my imaginary mallard. With great effort. Kidding aside, the Double Soul Driver outlines how you and your partner can transform and the many different properties your partner gets while he's inside you.
Oh, behave. Yeah.
It also tells you how damage works between the two characters and the kind of space you occupy and all other edge cases that hopefully makes for smooth gameplay. Bonus points, I wrote the Gaia memories to be compatible even with the non-W drivers. You can make your own Kamen Rider OC like Axel using the Luna memory or W using Cyclone Axel. Players can also find the various detective tools that Shotaro uses, like his Beetle cell phone or the Bat camera. And of course, a motorcycle that puts the rider in Kamen Rider. The full version of the homebrew even has the massive Revelgary that lets you change up your flavor motorcycle. There are 2 more character options that I created, but let's park that for a bit and discuss the magic items for masters in Part 3. Humans and Horrors. The Atlas Recall section outlines the various items that the DM can use to transform NPCs into one of W's monstrous dopants. In the series, dopants are humans who use these USB-like devices to transform into the monster of the week. Most of them use a biological interface, but the bigwigs in museum use their own belts. Because the truth of these Gaia memories is that they tend to be degenerative and addicting at the same time. So I wrote those qualities down. The Atlas Recall item is a generic magic item that all the other variants fork off from. It shows how attunement works, how corruption works, and how it tends to encourage this positive feedback loop that keeps users hooked on its power. And just like the transformation drivers, the Atlas Recall has its own transformation mechanic, where users can insert the USB into themselves at varying points in the initiative order. The different major Atlas recalls are typically reserved for very powerful dopants like Weather, Taboo, or Terror, while the minor Atlas recalls are for the monsters of the week, even the weird ones like Money or Virus. While I didn't create individual stat blocks, I did put in a designer's note indicating how these are intended to be used, as well as a ballpark estimate on how these items can alter an NPC stat block. It's not perfect, and as much as I wanted to create stat blocks for all 30 plus dopants, I didn't want to extend the development of this homebrew by another 2 or 3 months. The other reason why I created magic items is because I wanted to give the opportunities for DMs to create new stories with players. Let me explain. Let's say, for example, a player wants to play as a former distributor of Gaia memories, but they saw the damage they were causing and decided to turn to the forces of good. And the only way to fight back against the monsters is to use the Atlas recalls themselves, while trying to stave off the corruption effects. Perhaps later on, they might even become a Kamen Rider. Speaking of Kamen Riders, I did mention subclasses, didn't I? I guess I might as well pay my tab. let's go check these out in Part 4, Cyclone and Joker. The two subclasses are alternative ways your table can pull off the character fantasy of playing as Kamen Rider W. I did this because some DMs are more comfy managing magic items, while other DMs might be more willing to allow subclasses at their table instead. The Plains Mind Conduit is an artificer subclass inspired by Philip, while the Plains Mind Confidant is a fighter subclass inspired by Shotaro. I took some creative liberties by giving both of them armor transformations individually, if only to make things easier to play. However, the Soul Forward feature from the Plains Mind Conduit is the one that facilitates the 2-in-1 transformation fantasy. And yes, both subclasses can don multiple forms. Both subclasses are fully featured, with higher levels improving the core armor features of each subclass. You can find these subclasses under the variant character creation options for both the light version and the full version of the document. Now, you're probably wondering what I meant when I said there's a light version and a full version of the homebrew. The light or free version, which you can find as a link in the Ko-Fi shop page, contains the setting elements, the race, the feats, and the necessary magic items to fulfill the Kamen Rider fantasy. It even has the two subclasses based on Philip and Shotaro. The main difference between this and the full version is the amount of magic items included in each section. This includes magic items that let you transform into other Kamen Riders like Axel and Eternal. It also has more W forms like Fang and Extreme. It also introduces more gadgets, more vehicles, and a lot more dopants. I put in a lot of work in this massive 50+ page document, and I think it's worth the cost. But if you want to get a feel for it first, the free version lets you check out the quality of the homebrew and still gives you the entire intended experience. Also, purchasing it keeps the channel afloat, and we greatly appreciate any support you send our way. By the way, if you catch this video before the middle of July, you can get 30% off the full version just by using this discount code. However, there's a secret 40% discount code hidden in the video. If you figure it out, don't spoil it in the comments, but do feel free to brag about it. Now, I mentioned the challenge earlier in this video. MC, please do the honors.
Yes, hello, it is I, the Mallard Queen, and I've come to issue a challenge to the Mallard community. If you find Mallards get the Kamen Rider W Homebrew to 20 sales or higher by the end of June, DMV will release a subclass for Kamen Rider Axel and Kamen Rider Eternal for free.
If you're still itching for more D&D Kamen Rider content, I have another video that you can see right here. Until then,